again, isn't it, everyone? It's nice to be back with Larry Johnson, ex-CIA analyst, and a bit of a while since we had a chat, Larry. I was traveling, and that messed up a couple of times. We were going to chat, but things certainly haven't been stale on the Iranian front, have they?
That's one way to express it.
Well, we've got a second straight threat. The Iranians saying, "Oh, well, now that America, you've stopped shooting at us, we're going to start shooting at you. But if you threaten to do so again, we will pick up exactly where we left off." Saudi Arabia looking fragile. The Israelis, there's a meeting, I think, between Netanyahu and Trump coming up this week. Where do you want to start? I mean, what's the most important thing happening right now in the Middle East in the war, do you think?
Well, it's exposed the weakness of the United States. The United States doesn't have unlimited military power. And apparently now we've had Mike Waltz, and according to the New York Times, Dan Kane, and I think it was Axios today that reported that Admiral Cooper, all three of them have described that, continued bombing of Iran was not going to achieve anything, and that we're running out of offensive missiles.
Offensive?
So, yeah, and defensive as well. The defensive, they're down. I estimate right now with the PAC-3 missiles for the Patriot, they probably got fewer than 200. And so when you figure that you have to fire 2 of those for every incoming ballistic missile, that means you could maybe take on 100, except you only get a 10% interception rate, according to Ted Postal. So, the THAAD and the Patriot, they're useless. Expensive, but useless. The JASSMs are low. The Tomahawks are low, less than 1,000. CENTCOM's not the only theater. They ostensibly keep some of these weapons in supply for PACOM, Pacific Command, and European Command, EUCOM. They each want to have some sort of stockpile, but it's not. You can't call it a stockpile anymore because it's being depleted. Every time you fire one, you're depleting it, and you can't replace it. It can't be replaced for 3 to 4 years under optimistic assumptions, which assumes that the Chinese are actually going to lift their ban on rare earth minerals, which they are not.
So there's a couple of directions I want to take this, but firstly, the Americans seem to be tackling again. Let's start with this one. The biggest headline I think I've seen today, and generally the sentiment from colleagues I've spoken to in Washington, is that after the couple of weeks of Trump's bluster about Carg Island again, and we're going to go in there, and the sort of what was the idea that we were building up some massive equipment for an extended campaign, Trump's now having cold feet or wet feet or whatever you call it, right? He's going to back out again. I mean,
well, he was promising opening the gates of hell, and then apparently the gates of hell got shut. They locked him. So we've had now 48, 60 hours without any new U.S. attacks, and hopefully that'll last at least another day or two. So, and the reason was clear, according to all the press reporting now, that the military is telling Trump, you keep bombing, but it's not going to accomplish what you think it's going to accomplish. It's not going to force Iran to concede. And all it's going to do is drain weapons that we can't make them anymore. Or our ability to make them is constrained because they depend upon at least 4, in the case of the Tomahawk, 18 different rare earth minerals that China controls. And then the other element, though, is the fuel situation. There is now a global shortage of diesel and aviation fuel, and what's happening now is the price of diesel and aviation fuel are going up. Even though the futures oil market is now dropping, oh, good, peace is at hand. This is a roller coaster that we've been riding for the last 5 months.
2 nights without US strikes. We've got this, one could argue it's like Omani shuttle diplomacy, right? Very quick back and forth. Is this the start of a real off-ramp to you? Or is it just both sides trying to catch their breath before the next escalation? I had an interview earlier and people were asking me this, like, is this the actual start of a new ceasefire? And I was quick to point out that ceasefire requires a lot more comprehensive conversation than just a couple days without shooting.
It all depends on Trump. I mean, Iran's been willing to, agree to a ceasefire provided that Iran's demands are met. And Iran's not wavering on its demands. It's going to maintain control of the Strait of Hormuz, and there's not a damn thing the United States can do to change that.
So if we don't see, another few days, my suggestion was, if we don't see any exchanges of kinetic warfare in the next 3 days during this week, then it maybe is the return to diplomacy over conflict, a sustained effort to de-escalate by the US. Again, leading.
But that's the only way the United States can get out of this without hurting itself more. Because again, you've got to step back and say, okay, from a global position, the United States has enjoyed the reputation of being this massive, mighty, we are the best military in the world, according to Donald Trump. Nobody's better than us. Nobody's stronger than us. But then we have to step in and look at reality. What happened during the 18 months where the United States tried to stop the Houthis in the Red Sea and open up freedom of navigation? The first 14 months were Joe Biden's failed effort. And then Donald Trump launched Operation Rough Rider in March of 2025. And that lasted until first week of May 2025. And during that 7-week period, the United States lost almost $500 million worth of Predator drones, 3 F-18s, which, each of those total costs probably comes close to another $240 million for 3 of those. Not to mention the expenditure of weaponry, HARMS missiles, JASSMs, Tomahawks, etc., which those go out at a pretty good penny. And the United States said, "Oh, the Houthis capitulate. We're leaving." The Houthis didn't capitulate. We just left. And so then we decided, okay, well, now we're going to show those Iranians. And so we launched the attack on Iran. And what does Iran do? It destroys 19 radars. Two of those radars each cost more than $1 billion. And there's one highly classified radar system or satellite communication system. I don't know the particulars of it. I just, picked up, suggestions on the sidelines that irreplaceable. So the United States basically has been driven out of the Persian Gulf. We had a strong presence. The forward headquarters for Central Command's Air Force component called AFCENT. It's de facto even though it's on paper, its headquarters at Shaw Air Force Base in South Carolina. The reality is, for the last 20 years, it's been forward deployed to Qatar at Al Udeid. Just before the war started, the United States pulled the plug on that because they said correctly, those guys aren't going to be safe. So they got them out of there, and sure enough, the KAOC headquarters was destroyed or severely damaged. Well, we use that euphemism. So, what the United States accomplished was nothing other than forcing it to retreat. So it was then conducting all of its major air combat operations from Jordan, Mawafik al-Salti, Prince Hassan, and then Iran just bombarded those 2 locations, killed the 3. At least 3 personnel. I think the death toll is higher, and wounded dozens. And then the United States withdrew its personnel from Mawafik al-Salti, are now back in Israel. Yeah, big victory.
Well, I wanted to talk a bit about Israel and the US as I said at the start, we've got this rearranging here, just hit my desk. We've got this meeting. Netanyahu's flying to DC this week. Like, what? From my understanding, Larry, even Trump is disillusioned with the Israelis, right? He's out of kilter with the government. He's had enough of their warmongering. I mean, not that he's not a warmonger, but how can Netanyahu persuade Trump to escalate? How can he ask him to persuade him to increase military activity, given...
Well, I don't know if he can, but he's going to certainly press on that. I think you're correct on that. He's going to insist, you need to make another go at it. But I don't see when you look at the combination of the missile shortage, the depletion.
Yeah.
I was one of the first to write about that. I wrote about it at sonar21.com on March 3rd, 4 months ago, explaining that the numbers just didn't add up. Okay. I think I've been proven correct. Because now you got Mike Waltz even admitted that there was we're worried about the shortage of missiles. The precision missiles. You got three categories. You got the defensive missiles, Patriots, THAADs. Those are exhausted. Those are virtually, it's empty. They don't have any depth to draw upon whatsoever. Apart from the fact that they don't work, that's a whole nother topic. Ted Postal, he examined very carefully during the 42-day war that started on February 28th, that the Patriot missiles had about less than 10% interception. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you want to spend $6 million a missile, and when you're going to have to fire 2 of them to take out a potential incoming threat, so that's $12 million to fire at a ballistic missile that may have cost $100,000, $200,000, and you still miss. Yeah, that's such a deal.
I just think the whole thing's insane. You're reallocating huge swathes of your military, I don't know, presence, for lack of a better word, in Asia, right? In Japan, in South Korea particularly, we've seen a huge reorientation and deployment of stockpiles of activity, et cetera, et cetera. And this is the president who said, oh, no, we're done with the Middle East. We've got to take on China. We've got to focus on China. The Europeans are going to deal with Russia. Russia's going to deal with the Europeans. And the Middle East, Israel will be fine with that. Okay, so you launched the single worst and most dumbass war in the history of the Middle East, arguably. How's that going for you, mate? So, yeah. It's just I don't know. I talk to Westerners, I talk to Russians, I talk to Chinese, I talk to everyone who doesn't understand what's going on. Like, Trump is entrapped in the war of his own making. What do you think this does for America's standing in the Middle East? Let's put it that way. There's a question in there somewhere.
Yeah. I think the leaders of other countries would be more willing to go get a colonoscopy than they would to sign up in a relationship with the United States. The United States has become that toxic girlfriend, the one that is constantly drunk, spending all your money, getting you into fights. And you're going, if you got any sense, you say this relationship's not working out. I mean, the United States promised all the Gulf Arabs, hey, man, we got your back. We got you covered. Just give us your money, and we'll put in all these Patriot missiles. You'll be fine. Well, it turns out they weren't fine. They got blasted.
Well, have you seen that old video on the internet of the hot, crazy Matrix? It's a meme from like the 2000s, and a bloke puts on a axis, hot, crazy, and then hot of girls, and then he takes you through what you should do based on the number spectrum of each side. And at one point, sort of the toxic girlfriend, your analogy comes up, and she's like probably a 7 hot, but at least an 8 crazy. So she's pretty attractive, but she's also like insane. Like she'll burn you, she'll slash your tires. You get a fire in the pot or whatever that he said, sort of American thing. Yeah. So
Yeah.
to me,
You go to bed and wake up and find out she performed transgender surgery on you. Yeah.
oh well, to quote Charlie Harper from Two and a Half Men, she super glued my my nuts to my thigh. I don't know. I love that series. If you ever watched that, yeah, that's sort of crazy. But yeah, the toxicity of this entire war. The bottom line for the audience who are like, what are they talking about? Is off the scale at this point. I kind of wanted to dig a little bit more into the Bab el Mandeb Strait, because, to be honest, I think this is the flashpoint. I think this is the linchpin of how things go. The Strait of Hormuz is, I think, pretty clear. The Americans cannot leverage anything to force the hand of the Iranians. Bab el Mandeb is completely different theater. The Houthis are a pretty unpredictable actor. The Americans failed to do anything when they bombed the hell out of them, or attempted to bomb the hell out of them last year.
But wait, why do you say the Houthis are unpredictable? I would argue just the opposite. They're quite predictable.
Well, I think they're unpredictable in that we haven't seen them in action in the Strait. We don't know what they would do as a maritime interference. Like, it's pretty clear with the Iranians.
Well, actually, we did before. I mean, they boarded ships, they hit ships, but in this case, they didn't actually block. They've not blockaded Bab el Mandab. And remember, Bab el Mandab in Arabic means gate of lamentation. Great name, very poetic. They just simply said, Saudi ships carrying oil, we're not going to let you go load up, and we're going to, if you come out carrying oil and try to go through Bab el Mandab, we're going to stop you. Now, there was two exceptions to that. There was two ships carrying oil for China, and the Houthis let that one go through. But then the crazy part was where the Saudis decided to, apparently it was the Saudis, they launched that attack on Sana'a airport just as or prior to or following the arrival of the Yemeni delegation, the Houthi delegation that attended the funerals ceremonies of the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. And then the Houthis retaliated and said, okay, well, you hit us, we're going to hit you. They hit 2 air bases. Then they went after a couple of ships. And then in retaliation for that, the Saudis bombed Hodeidah. They claimed they didn't do any damage to the port. So I'll take the Saudis at their word. And then the Houthis said, oh, you want to play? They took out Jizna, the world's most sophisticated petrochemical refinery. The world's most sophisticated. They've inflicted damage that'll probably keep it shut down for at least 4 months. And now bless you. And now they're waiting to see if the Saudis retaliate. And I think, if you get in a game of tit for tat, where, I'm going to hit you and you're going to hit me, when you got more tits and they have no tats, tough to play tit for tat, because they'll bust the hell out of your tits, which they've done. And all they got to do now, the next targets would be the oil terminals at Yanbu. You take out the north and south terminal there, man, Saudi's got real problems then, because they're not exporting any oil through Red Sea or through the Persian Gulf.
Well, some analysts think that oil could go to 200. On a side note, Larry, the reason I'm pulling faces is because when you said tits, and then it's like, sort of, we're going to tit the tits of the America, that makes me think of Trump and his fat. I'm not going to continue that analogy, but anyway.
But that tit for tat expression. So I always just say, okay, if you're gonna If they're going to hit your tit, you're going to hit their tat. So total it up. Do the Houthis really have any tats to hit? Not really. I mean, it's not like they got all this advanced, sophisticated infrastructure laying around the country that could be bombed and create some real economic damage. Hell, they're impoverished, but they're damn good at building missiles and
Well, that's
launching
the
them.
thing, isn't it? That's the thing about production as well. You can't just turn this shit back on. That's why the LNG cuts from the Qataris in the first month of the war, and they said, "Oh, we're just going to discontinue." So we've now got a fifth less LNG output globally. Like, it's huge. People don't get this. It's the same with Russia, Ukraine, or the impact on outputs in any
Yeah.
energy war. It's insanity. But this is why I think it's a particularly big deal. And the Houthis are a how do you call it, like a asymmetrical actor. They are a non-state actor. They don't operate by kinetic warfare. It's a guerrilla, you could say, effective. They're very decentralized is the best way to put it, right? They're very decentralized. They can act in various ways in various points, and a conventional military, especially if you're leading through air force alone, that's not going to be enough to deal with anything. Like,
Well,
what are the Americans to do? Seriously,
they fought the United States to a standstill.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that. And then, I've heard a laughable comment that the Pakistanis, oh, well, we'll go take care of those Houthis. Oh, really? With
Pakistan.
the Pakistan, yeah. So
the Pakistanis couldn't deal with India. How are they going to deal with the Houthis?
Yeah. So it is, Pakistan's they have a pretty good military for defending against, if the homeland's being attacked, yeah, they can defend themselves. But projecting military force, 1,000 miles away, 2,000 miles away, nah, they can't do it.
Well,
Plus, it's not like Pakistan's some great economic power that can afford to do that. That's the other thing people need to take into consideration, that, Pakistan's played an important role as a mediator, because they've had if you will, the trust of the United States and the trust of the Iranians. So they've done and they did a good job with the mediation, getting the MOU signed. But it was the United States that broke the MOU, not Iran.
No, the Iranians have been pretty consistent. As we've said many times before, they're very savvy diplomatic actors, and it's Trump's erraticism, it's his impatience and sense of injustice that he's not getting his way. That is the thing that changes the dynamics. But what I find interesting, Larry, is, well, someone's put this, which is that Israel is intentionally using up all of America's firepower. Now, I'm pretty confident in, if Netanyahu goes to America this week, he's going to suggest the idea, and I want your thoughts on this perspective, which is, he's going to go there and he's going to say, hey, look, Trump, I get it. You're frustrated with the war, but we'll deal with the Houthis. We'll take care of that theater if you take care of the Strait, Hormuz, right? So he's going to try to designate responsibility so that Trump's like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Israel, deal with the Baba Mendeb. I can't, tongue twister for me. And we'll deal with the Houthis. Yeah, so we're separate, but we're dealing with that, and then the Houthis are kept under control. Actually, I like that idea. Everyone, you should vote for Netanyahu in the general election, right? You should vote, support the ultra-nationalist government. Do you think that's complete bollocks, or do you think that that's his play?
Well, no, he may actually make, that's not a far-fetched campaign plan for him, but then you get reality intrudes, and what Israel can do. Anybody want to make the argument that Israel's got more military power to use against the Houthis than the United States?
No.
No. Israel's already dealing with 2 damaged oil refineries, one in Haifa, one in Ashdod, which is constrained their supply of aviation fuel and diesel. So now they're relying on imports from via the United States, coming out of the Netherlands, I believe. But if they get into another try to, sustained intensive combat operations, they're going to run out of fuel. But on top of it, they don't have any air cover any longer. The Patriots are gone, the THAADs are gone, and the Israelis relied upon those for trying to intercept 2/3 of the attacks that took place during the first 42 days of the war. David Sling and Iron Dome are useless. Against little, Hezbollah rockets and some drones, but that's about it. So, Israel, if they get re-engaged in a combat operation against Iran, Iran's going to light them up.
Okay, so I'm just saying here now, Trump shared, this is just about an hour ago, Trump's been sharing AI-generated images, apparently portraying the seizure of an Iranian oil tanker and a strike on Iran's cargo oil export terminal. One image shows Trump on board a tanker flying a US flag, and another shows fighter jets bombing Karg Island.
Fantasy. He's good at fantasy, but the the real world is something different. There's nothing the United States could do militarily that would open the Strait of Hormuz at a cost that the United States would be willing to carry. Yeah.
I don't know why it's blocking it so much, but this is the extent of him. You can see my ring. I'll bring it up on the internet, but Jesus Christ, like, what is going on, Harry? Like, what is he doing? I think the guy has dementia at this point. Like, he's got mental ailment, like, clearly.
There are many who show that point of view. I think, the suggestion that he has what's called prefrontal lobe. So that doesn't necessarily attack long-term memory, but it does increase his what's called confabulation. He'll say things that he believes are absolutely true, even though they're false, but he genuinely believes they're true. And yet, apparently, the advice that came from Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Defense, General Kane, and then Admiral Brad Cooper basically told him, "Hey, we can keep bombing, but it's not going to achieve what you want it to achieve. And if we do that, we're going to deplete missiles that we don't have in supply. So we're going to be depleting our assets." And you go back to what you said earlier, that Trump's remains obsessed with China as well, and and I think the Chinese are quite content. Let the United States punch itself out on Iran, because every missile they fire at Iran is one less they're going to fire at China.
This is I'm trying to find a source for the AI images, because I want us to see these. Well, here's one. This will give the extent to the audience of what the hell we're talking about. It's just funny. Like, what is that? Like, I can ask a ChatGPT to make something better than that when I'm drunk. Like, what are these guys doing over here? It's jumping ship, literally. It's oil tanker now. Okay, he's hanging out with his best mate Zelensky, apparently. Anyway, I mean, it's so stupid, isn't it? It's just embarrassing. This guy.
But if you go to his Truth Social account, he's got like 10 images related to that. I mean, it's just
Truth Social. I don't want to give him the money, or my expended energy. Should I do that? Truth Social. Well, okay. Anyway, well, talk me through. So, what do you think of this idea that the other argument people are saying is, or I'm thinking of, is that by Netanyahu will try to persuade Trump, look, hey, give us that ultimate responsibility of the Houthis, and it will help us normalize relations with Saudi Arabia. We will get we will get the Abraham Accords signed, and the Saudis will recognize the Israelis, and everything will happen honky dory. It's complete jokes, right?
Well, I mean, the Saudis' position, unless they've changed it, was they're not going to sign on to the Abraham Accords until the Palestinians have a state. Israel's not willing to let Palestinians have a state. Therefore, there's not going to be any Abraham Accords. And the Saudis got their hands full right now with the Yemenis. The smart move on their part would be to reach a negotiated settlement with the Houthis. Turn the Houthis into a friend, into an asset. Stop, treating them like they're an enemy. Leave them alone. Lift the Saudi blockade. Now, some say, well, the Saudis really haven't imposed the blockade. Well, that's not how the Ansar Allah sees it. So it sort of doesn't matter what we think; it matters what they think. So as long as the Ansar Allah believes that the Saudis are blockading them, the Houthis are going to continue punching back. But the Saudis got it within their capability to come back through and just say, okay, let's make a deal, let's stop this. Because candidly, it's far more destructive for Saudi Arabia. They have lots of infrastructure that the Houthis can blow up that's, irreplaceable, or it's not easily replaceable.
Well, it's a huge risk to MBS's Vision 2030. The whole reconstruction, if you like, of the Saudi economy to diversify away from oil. Well, you need the oil to fund the diversification, and if the oil is being hit, the facilities are being hit now and interfered with by this new front. I struggle to see how the Saudis can somehow sidestep this, how they can get out of this quagmire that is because of the United States, right? What options do they have, in your opinion, realistically?
Well, option A, continue to attack the Houthis and suffer damage. Option B, pursue a diplomatic settlement with the Houthis, satisfy the Houthi demands, and turn off that offensive threat to the south. I don't think there's a third alternative in there. I think it's pretty black and white. One, more war, more destruction. And look, the Saudis have created some terrific infrastructure. Bullet trains, and there's a Brit by the name of Simon Wilson is his name, a kid out of Wales. He travels the world, and he did a bullet train across. He did a bullet train across Saudi Arabia, and then stayed at one of their luxury Red Sea resorts. Spectacular. The Saudis, they keep getting suckered into these U.S. wars, and the United States is the one that's stirring up the problems in the Middle East, not Iran, but all the Gulf Arabs. They bet on the United States. The United States could protect them, and it turned out the U.S. couldn't. Failed.
I wanted to share the other images. People were requesting that we see them. So hang on. I want your thoughts, your immediate reaction to these. So he goes ballistic, sharing Trump 2028, of course. Well, I don't know why he looks sort of in his 30s, in the 80s,
Yeah.
But we've seen that one. So Trump single-handedly is taking over a tanker. That's very powerful. That is. Now it's daytime, and he's taken over the tanker. But we've got a couple of American stooges, and the is that the Houthis, the Iranians? I'm not really sure what's going on there. And this U.S. aircraft carrier is very close to somehow breaking into the tanker, but that's fine. This one was my other favorite. Any reactions to this one, Harry?
Yeah. He's instead of doing it real world, he does it on fantasy. And so I'll take that. Yeah, let him have his rich fantasy life here.
No, go on.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say,
As-
I'm seeing in real time, Larry. This is clearly Karg Island on this side. This one, mainland Iran, I guess. This is how the United States is going to take Karg Island. We don't need manpower. We don't need ground forces. We just use F-35s and superimposed set of tankers.
and we use munitions that are increasingly depleted that we don't have any more of. But hey, ignore that logistics, logistics issue.
Iran, Larry, why'd you have to mention that bit? This was my other favorite one. For some reason, he just decided to go after Canada.
Because of all their wildfires and smoke that came pouring across the border.
Okay, so a war's going to help. Yeah, the air will stop at the war. I can't go that way. Have you seen that? There's a gag from Family Guy or something, and it's like sort of the air, like, oh, I can't go that way. It's the northern border. I'll go across there. I'll go to Mexico instead. Some fantastic pieces there. Now, one thing I'm interested a little bit to dig into with you as well, in the time we have left, is the internal dynamics of Iran, because from my understanding, despite them being largely unanimous on the war and method itself, there's a little bit of varying degrees of how long to sustain that. What's your feeling on that? Have you spoken to anyone on the inside or got any insights that might reveal this a bit better?
Well, no, the West, U.S. in particular, keeps putting out the propaganda that there's this great internal division in the upper reaches of the Iranian government. There isn't, but we tell ourselves that. Again, we keep lying to ourselves. Iran's quite united on this, and even Ghalibaf and Araghchi are seen as the sort of the weak sisters in this lash up, but everything they've been saying publicly over the last 2 weeks is fully in line with what the IRGC is saying and what Mustafa Khamenei is saying or writing. So Iran, all the U.S. attacks have done is further unite the Iranian population against the West, against the United States in particular. It hasn't made them more willing to say, we gotta get rid of our government. No, they're defending their homeland, and this is it sounds a little counterintuitive, but actually we saw the same thing in Britain during the Blitz. When Hitler started bombing London, it didn't turn the population against Winston Churchill. It united the population. And the U.S. bombing of Germany had the same effect internally and within Germany. Again, it solidified the support for the Nazis, not the opposite. So, at some point, we need to learn from history and say, you know what? Well, this idea that we're going to drop bombs and that's going to change the people's attitudes, it usually ends up doing the exact opposite.
Yeah, as we said before we came on air, I've been in Croatia. One of the things I was learning quite a lot about was the Ustasha and the shocking levels they went to in treatment of groups, to the point where even the Nazis were like, okay, these guys are quite extreme. It's kind of insane. But one element of the reason I'm mentioning that is because today we've had the remarkable news of the past 24 hours about Ukraine and Iran, and one sailor being killed, and latest on that. Actually, let's just get your thought. What do you make of this? What do you make of this development in the Caspian Sea and the Iranian vessel being struck by Ukraine?
It's irrelevant, unimportant, an act of desperation by Ukraine. Ukraine is getting clobbered night after night after night after night. Russia is now announced, I guess 4 weeks ago, Peskov said, we're special military operations essentially over. We're now at war. And so what has Russia done since then? They've shut down Odessa. Nothing going in and out of Odessa. Any cargo vessel that tries to approach, it's getting blown up. And the Russians don't give a damn what flag the vessel is. They put out the warning. And Maersk said, yo, wait, okay, we're no more Maersk ships are going in, and they're one of the largest container fleets in the world. Then the Russians are just being relentless in destroying drone factories and other military installations in Kyiv. And on the ground, they are making very rapid progress in Sumy, Kharkiv, Donetsk, Luhansk, Dnipropetrovsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson. So, 2 years ago, the Russians were able to mount like a one-direction offensive. They fought like the Battle of Bakhmut, then they fought the Battle of Avdiivka, then they fought the Battle of Pokrovsk. Now they're fighting multiple battles, like at least on 6 different axes of attacks.
But if it's irrelevant, then why is the head of the Iranian Parliament's National Security Commission, Ibrahim Azizi, issuing a warning to Ukraine for its attack?
Yeah, that's what you do diplomatically. I don't pay attention to words, look at actions. And launching another ballistic missile from Iran that they could use on Israel into Ukraine, it doesn't help Ukraine's security at all. I mean, it doesn't help Iran's security at all. The Russians are doing a fine job of dismantling Ukraine's military capabilities. So yeah, I'm sure there may be more attacks like this, but it doesn't cripple. My understanding is the ship was damaged but not crippled. So
some conspiracists have argued that this is the beginning of a integration between the two wars, the two fronts, that because of Ukraine's actions or because of the overlap between the two now, somehow the two wars are going to become combined. And this was always the plan, which I think is complete rubbish. But
I agree with you on that. But let's say that that's true. Does that mean the United States has more military power now to bring to the table than it did 5 months ago? No, it doesn't. You got Zelensky now begging for patriots. He can beg all he wants. They can't make him out of thin air. And the monthly production of patriots by Lockheed is 50. Maybe on a good day, 60, or a good month, 60. Well, when you look at the number of missiles and drones that like Russia's firing at Ukraine, the United States can't replace that at all. And there's no European state that can step up and say, oh, we got ample supplies. I mean, the European economies are running on fumes right now. It's not like they're sitting on big piles of cash that they can spend and not have to worry about.
So what I'm reading here as well is that there's been quite a lot of emphasis by the Iranians, the foreign spokesman for the foreign ministry, saying messages are actively being exchanged with the US through mediators. What? So are we just going to see another MOU?
Well, it won't be another. It may be a revised MOU with Iran making more demands. That instead of some promise of future release of frozen assets, they'll demand immediate release of frozen assets. But basically, the structure of the MOU is such that Iran's not going to go back and renegotiate that to make concessions. Iran's not interested in making concessions. The United States has made 3 different attempts. The first was through Qatar about 3-4 weeks ago. The second was through Islamabad. That one, the Iranians said, no, we're not interested right now. The last was the Prime Minister of Iraq, who went to Washington, sat down with Trump, and then made a beeline to Tehran. And the Iranians said, nope, not interested. So now it looks like Islamabad and Qatar are back in the mix, brokering the talks. trying. But again, Iran's made its demands clear, and Iran's not letting up on those demands. And with each of these days, as things are getting blown up, they're rebuilding, they're restocking, they're uh, producing more missiles, more drones, and they're prepared for continued war with the United States. But the problem the United States has got is twofold. One is the weapon shortage of the precision missiles. You got three categories: the defensive missiles, air defense, they don't work. You've got SEAD, which stands for suppression of enemy air defense. That's the HARM missile. Again, that's running on short supply. And then you have the long range, mid range precision missiles, Tomahawks, JASSMs. JASSMs can go up to 1,000 miles. But then you get down to the prisms. That's what the HIMAR fires. That has a range of 300 miles. So it's whether you're firing it from Bahrain or Kuwait, doesn't give you a lot of range. And in any event, if the HIMARS batteries themselves have been blown up, what I understand. But the prisms, I think Lockheed Martin last year only made 56. So not a lot.
It's terrifying, the disparity between the actual output of the Americans' production of stockpiles or whatever versus the rate at which they're being used, especially the first month. Like I think it was one in-house estimation, the intelligence agencies that Trump's trying to destroy, even though they're the ones that help him enact his war, were saying that it would take them the best part of 2 years to replenish the amount that they spent in 1 month. Again, I'm going back to March. Heaven knows what it is now after these several months.
Well, that's optimistic. They used up almost 1,000 in the 6 weeks of so the war started on the 28th, essentially ended April 15th. So about 6-7 weeks. They used over 1,000 Tomahawk missiles. Well, they're not producing 1,000 missiles a month or a year. It's much lower than that. So they can, but to build them, you need these rare earth minerals, and China's got those. We don't.
I mean, look, I don't think we're going to see kinetic warfare between the Chinese and Americans in the next few years. Everyone has been putting this emphasis on next year, or sort of by the end of 2030, the Chinese would make some moves on Taiwan, but I don't think they're ready. I think, and also they don't need to be in a rush now after Trump's decision making, right?
China wasn't going to launch any military operation. That's always, again, that's been another meme advanced by the United States. China's not going to do it. But now you got the talk about, we need to build up the Gulf states' defenses. Against what? That Iran never attacked them until those countries allowed themselves to be used as launching pads for attacking Iran. 47 years, Iran has not invaded a single one of its neighbors. Not one.
No, but the argument is that they've been interfering, much like the US has. But
how interfering? They haven't interfered in Kuwait, in Qatar, in Bahrain, in Saudi. They haven't done it. And their support for Hezbollah and Hamas has been confined that supporting the Palestinian people's quest for a homeland. That's a whole different category.
So what do you think in the final few minutes we have here, Larry, what do you think happens next then? Are we going to see a return to sustained peace efforts, or is this just a reprieve from Trump because he was distracted by Laura Loomer in Ukraine and he's going to turn back his attention and up the military escalation again?
Well, the military situation in Ukraine is going to get worse and worse. And the United States is going to recognize it can't do anything to change that at all. Bibi is coming to town for the funeral of. He's coming to town for the funeral of Senator Graham, I guess that's going to be held on Wednesday. So I don't anticipate there are going to be any renewed strikes on Iran until after Wednesday. But I can't rule out that Trump will convince him, or he'll be convinced by somebody that he needs to do it, and he'll restart it, and then the situation for weapon-wise for the United States will become more dire.
Mm. But
Now,
how much?
the point. The point is, there's not a military solution here, and I know I saw you did an interview with General Hodges. Jesus, a guy with that experience thinking that they could take Karg Island or Kemish Island. Give me a break. Kemish is the size of Okinawa. It's bigger than Okinawa. And in World War II, if you know any of your history, which you may not, because it was 80 plus years ago, 81 years ago now, the United States invaded Okinawa with 190,000 troops, suffered 50,000 casualties. Karg Island, interestingly enough, is almost the exact same size as Iwo Jima. The United States invaded Iwo Jima with 70,000 troops, and it had the luxury of having battleships offshore for 3 weeks, just pounding the island mercilessly. And even with that merciless pounding, the United States ended up with 26,000 casualties out of 70,000 troops. Horrific numbers. About almost one third of the soldier Marines were killed or wounded. So this nonsense that we can do a ground operation that'll cripple the Iranians. It's fantasy, like those pictures of Trump taking the oil tanker.
I would actually be quite entertained to see what he'd be like. I always imagine what these images are like actually enacted out. But yeah, no, the island hopping campaign of the United States during the Second World War is still, in many estimates, the biggest loss of life in a single theater, right?
Not really. It was the U.S. only lost 110,000.
Well, that's a thing. Well, I mean, considering the level that American citizens do not want to lose American lives, when two
Well,
people,
no country wants to lose their lives of their soldiers. The Soviets didn't want to lose the lives of their soldiers, but Battle of Stalingrad cost over 800,000 soldiers in just one battle.
I know.
The United States, in the entirety of the Pacific campaign, lost 110,000. Nothing.
The point
That's
is
one of
that
the reasons the U.S. could fight wars, because we really never paid much of a price for it. We got wealthy out of it.
No, I mean, but that's my point. The difference in the mentality or approach towards casualty numbers amongst countries is quite significant. But Larry, I guess my last question for you before you move on to your next engagement is simply, what do you encourage people to watch out for? Like, maybe we can talk later on in the week. But
yeah, we'll see if if Trump's rhetoric turns back to opening the gates of hell. If he goes back on that, then
no,
you have to watch out.
Again, is he? No.
I've given up trying to predict Trump. I mean, he's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Boy, dual personalities. Says one thing one day, says the one thing the next. Remember last week it was about the Strait of Hormuz for 12 days, man. We had to open the Strait of Hormuz. That's why all these military strikes to degrade Iran's ability to shut down ships from passing through the Strait of Hormuz. And then, boom, no, it's the nukes. We got to keep Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. So what happened to the Strait of Hormuz? That got pushed to the side.
No, but it's imminent. All of this is imminent, Larry. But anyway,
Yeah.
It's an absolute pleasure, my friend. It's nice to do this after a little bit of a time away. As you noted, I do travel. I'm in a hotel room today, and I'll be in a hotel all the time traveling. But it looks very comfy where you are by the pool in your knitted army shirt. Less colorful than some of your other ones, I will admit. But I'm wearing my own equivalent of flamboyant shirt. So yeah, been a pleasure. Everyone for watching.
Well played. Well played. I always enjoy our chats. Thanks, Peter.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Speak soon. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks, Larry. That was great. See you later.